Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Lacey and today I will be going through a list of pregnancy symptoms that I feel like people don't really talk about as a soon-to-be first-time mom. Now, you'll hear people say, oh, you'll be tired, you'll have morning sickness, you'll have acne and tender breasts, and you'll be going to the bathroom more. And that's all true, but I feel like there are a few things that I haven't really heard people talk about. And as someone who watched a lot of videos on the first trimester and pregnancy in general when we were trying to conceive and once I got pregnant, I just wanted to touch on a few things that I wish I had known. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that everyone's pregnancy is different. Some people experience all of the symptoms, some people don't experience as many symptoms, some people don't experience any symptoms at all. It definitely varies person to person, but this is my personal experience. So without further ado, let's get into it. First off, we have morning sickness. Now, in the movies and TV shows, morning sickness is usually seen as like you wake up and immediately you're running to the bathroom to throw up, which can be true because part of what causes morning sickness is not having anything in your stomach. But for me, I never threw up, I just had persistent all-day nausea, which is the main thing I didn't see a lot of people talking about. It's not morning sickness, it can be all-day sickness or nausea. And so one thing people say to combat morning sickness is to have something next to your bed that you can eat first thing in the morning to try and like get something into your stomach and help settle it before the nausea or sickness shows up. But for me personally, I have hypothyroidism, so I have medicine I have to take, and when I take the medicine I can't eat anything for an hour. I can basically just have water. The problem with that is if I had to wait an hour to eat, then my nausea would come on, and when you have nausea you don't really want to eat, and then add in food aversions, and it is a rough combination. I practically lived on lemon and ginger tea in my first trimester. So yeah, morning sickness is a thing, but it can also just be all day sickness or nausea, and you kind of have to deal with it and figure out what works best for you, which like I said, for me was lemon and ginger tea, and then just kind of eating whatever I could actually stomach. And I feel like that needs to be talked about just a little bit more. Like, you know, you hear morning sickness and you think, oh, okay, like I'll wake up in the morning and I'll throw up and then like I'll be fine. But in some cases it's just kind of like an all day you feel sick. So I felt a little shocked by it. But yeah, so that is definitely number one on my list because it lasted for so long. The next thing I would like to talk about is the tiredness. Okay, so people say, oh, you'll be more tired than you've ever been in your life and you've never experienced tiredness like this. And that is true to some extent, but honestly, I felt like I wasn't that much more tired than I originally was before I got pregnant. So leading up to getting a positive pregnancy test, I was diagnosed with insulin resistance. And part of that is I was constantly tired. Like I felt like I could fall asleep at the drop of a hat at any point throughout the day. Then I started medication to help with that, and I felt like I really got my energy back. And then a month later I got pregnant. So once again, my energy was just gone. However, what didn't help was I also had about a 3-hour round trip to work, so an hour and a half there roughly and an hour and a half back home. And it was also the fall, so that meant daylight savings time was in full effect, so I was already not getting home until 6:30, so I was driving at night. So being tired, driving at night. However, I found that I was probably more tired on the weekends, mainly because I wasn't like up and doing a whole lot most of the time. So that's kind of one thing about me. Like if I wake up and, you know, I just kind of like lay in bed and I have a lazy start to my day, then I tend to just be tired later on. However, 10 out of 10 would recommend naps after lunch. Now, the third thing that I felt like people didn't really talk about was the insomnia. Oh my God, the insomnia for me was terrible. Now, I heard about the night sweats, like with the change in your hormones and everything, knew that, said, okay, cool, got it. But the insomnia was something so out of left field for me that I was not anticipating it. The insomnia, the tiredness, and the all-day nausea was just a recipe for disaster for me. It also did not help that my body just did not want caffeine. You can have up to about 200 milligrams of caffeine, and before I would get to work and I would get a cup of coffee. When I first had my 3-hour round trip days, I would sometimes even drink 2 cups of coffee, one like kind of between like breakfast and lunch, and then another like before I had to drive home. But after getting pregnant, my body just like physically rejected coffee. It did not taste good to me. It didn't matter if I put sugar in it. It didn't matter if I put creamer in it. It didn't matter if, you know, I went to a local coffee shop and, you know, got like one of their frou-frou milkshake coffees. Like, my body just did not want coffee at all. So for me, the insomnia was worse than the tiredness that I would experience throughout the day. I am a person that absolutely loves her sleep. So being up at 2 a.m. and not being able to go back to sleep was very, very hard for me, and I got super frustrated. But you know what else made me frustrated? The brain fog. You hear about baby brain once you've given birth, but the pregnancy brain started almost immediately for me. And I thought this was crazy because I didn't really see a whole lot of people talking about the brain fog when you're pregnant. And so for me, like, I would be at work, and if I was doing something but then like got distracted or had to stop and do something else and tried to go back to what I was originally doing, I would just completely blank on where I was. I would just constantly forget what I was supposed to be doing, and this went on for weeks. It was so rough. So pregnancy brain being a thing was wild for me. So I'd never heard anyone talk about it before. And as far as I'm aware, there is no fix for brain fog. However, one thing there can be a fix for is rhinitis or congestion. Now, I do want to say I did see people talking about congestion as a first trimester symptom. But the thing is for me, it felt like I just constantly had a horrible sinus infection for months. I hate having a stuffy nose. I hate not being able to breathe out of my nose. I also hate when like my nose is stuffy and like I can kind of breathe out of it, but then like it makes a noise while I'm breathing out of it. So nasal strips are like my best friend. I started using them and I have not stopped. The sixth thing I want to talk about is the abdominal pain. So I heard people say that in the first trimester you'll feel kind of crampy, and especially with implantation bleeding and stuff like that. But what I wasn't prepared for is I felt like I had just done the most intense ab workout of my life. Now, I don't know how many people actually experienced this, because from the other moms that I talked to, they never had a symptom like this. And from what I've read, it's due to the increase in progesterone and your muscles relaxing. But yeah, I would like try and get out of bed and just feel like my entire abdomen was sore, and like, you know, I just did like a 3-minute plank or something. It was a little shocking. But speaking of being uncomfortable and being in pain, one thing that I wasn't quite aware of, so you hear about sore breasts, you know that that's going to be a thing. However, I didn't know that your nipples would be so sore that it would actually hurt to put on a bra. Even moving to my soft bralettes just made me feel more comfortable. I ended up having to buy Lanzino pain relief spray to use for a little while to try and give myself some relief, because yeah, just putting on my super soft bralette would hurt, as well as taking it off. And another thing is the constipation. Once again, this can be contributed to the increase in progesterone, but it was miserable for me. Now, I heard about, you know, taking stool softeners and stuff like later after you have the baby to, you know, kind of help get things moving along after birth, but I did not hear anyone say that you would need to start using them in the first trimester. What I read and what I heard after specifically looking for this was don't strain when you're using the bathroom, and don't use laxatives. With straining, you can run the risk of developing hemorrhoids, but the laxatives, they cause cramps and muscle contractions, and that is something that you really want to avoid. So stool softener ended up becoming become like a daily thing for me, and I've been taking it ever since. Once I started using that with my other vitamins and everything, it got a lot better, though there's definitely been like some ups and downs with it. So we have 2 more things left on this list, and the next thing that I will be talking about is the fact that you can get a pinched nerve. In all of the reading and watching that I did, this was something that I did not realize you could get. And I have never had a pinched nerve in my life, but I got one on the left side of my left leg at around 10 weeks, I believe, and it was the most excruciating pain I've ever experienced in my life. Now, apparently, when I looked into it, this pinched nerve can show up if you are severely overweight or, you guessed it, pregnant. Now, I really think I was just really unlucky with this because no one that I've talked to ever experienced a pinched nerve when they were pregnant. But mine started to resolve around 20 weeks, and I only ever really had a problem with it at night. But yeah, having never seen anyone talk about this, I did not realize that this was something that could happen. So to say that I was shocked would be an understatement. And then the 10th thing I would like to talk about is the bleeding. Now, I would like to say that bleeding is common, but not normal. And I feel like that's kind of a fine line to walk. I feel like a lot of people talk about implantation bleeding, and that is one thing, but the thing is you can bleed for a lot of reasons. So your cervix is softening and becoming more sensitive, so having sex can cause bleeding. You can also have cramps and some bleeding from implantation, but you can also have bleeding from straining on the toilet. So when I mentioned stool softener earlier, it can also help you avoid a very scary situation on the toilet. Now, I won't go into details, but I did end up in the ER like a few days after my confirmation appointment because of this, but everything ended up being fine. Still, it is anxiety inducing and jarring and nerve-wracking and straight up not a fun time. I feel like I saw a lot of people associating bleeding with there being something wrong, but I didn't really see anyone talk about the fact that you can bleed for a lot of reasons. Now, you should always talk to your doctor, go get checked out if you're experiencing bleeding and it's worrying you, but I do think that this is something that should be talked about more. I feel like if it were to be talked about more, then maybe I wouldn't have been as scared as I was going to the hospital. But the physician's assistant that I talked to that day, she was so helpful and so kind and really put a lot of my fears and anxieties at ease. But that is it for this list. So I do know that some of these are symptoms that people talk about, but I felt like there were just a few details that should really be mentioned. But I hope you found this video helpful. Once again, this is my personal experience and everyone's pregnancy is different, but I just wanted to share in case anyone else was going through the same thing. I do feel like I drew the short stick when it came to the pinched nerve, but so be it. If you like this video, I hope you will stick around for the rest of my pregnancy videos. The next one I will be working on is my first trimester must-haves list. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.